to Luke 12. Verse 16 through verse 20. Luke 12, 16 through 20. I'm going to read about the uncertainty of life. It may sound depressing, but we all have to realize that's the reality of life. And Jesus tells a story, a parable. The King James uses the word parable. It's a story. Jesus telling a story. Things are told in stories sometimes because people can understand stories easier. They can understand direct teaching maybe. Couched in a story makes it a little more easier to understand. And he said a certain rich man, he produced a good crop. Well, he was happy. He was delighted. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. Then he said, this is what I will do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of good things laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. But God said unto him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded or taken from you. Guy never thought about that, did he? He never thought that that was his last day on earth. Most people, unless they're elderly and they're on their deathbed, but there are many people whose last day of life comes suddenly, unaware. A drunk driver on the highway, a sudden heart attack, somebody veering off the road into their lane. Takes people's lives suddenly, and we're unprepared for it, unknowing about it. But in the meantime, we're making these plans. We all do that. We all make plans. There's nothing wrong with making plans, actually. I mean, it's a good thing to make plans. We all do it. We all, hundreds and thousands of people, everybody we know make plans. We all have plans for what we're going to do this afternoon, don't we? We all have plans what we're going to do tomorrow. There are people making plans what they're going to do tomorrow, yet tomorrow for them will never come. That may happen to us. We don't know. I don't want to sound pessimistic. I don't want to sound like I'll throw a blanket on your life, but that's the way it is. We never know. We have these boxes on the calendar. We check the boxes off on one by one. And at some point, we won't check the box anymore. Life is delicate. Very delicate. People so often don't handle their life or care. They make more plans on what they're going to do. They spend more time planning their vacation than they do planning their life. Never considering that today may be their last day. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with making plans. Young people make plans. They make plans on what they're going to do, the important things. They make plans about what kind of car they're going to have, what kind of home they're going to have. They make plans on their education and what school they're going to go to and what they're going to do with their career and jobs and marriage and so on. People make those plans. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with them making plans, obviously, but at some point we need to stop and realize that our plans, while as important they are to our mortal life, at some point, everyone's going to stand before God. Everyone. James chapter 4, I've got on the screen. Now listen, you who say, tomorrow, today, we'll go to this city or that city, we'll spend some time there, we'll carry on business and make money. Why, you don't even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You're a mist that appears for a little while, and then poof. It don't say poof in the King James, but I added that to it. Poof, it's gone. You ever see a mist coming out of a tea kettle or off of a river or lake or something like that? Before you can even focus on it, it's gone. So quickly. I'm sounding pessimistic, I know. So quickly. just like a mist, it's gone. In Ecclesiastes, Solomon wrote, I looked at everything done on earth and saw that it is all useless, like chasing the wind. Can't capture the wind. Yeah, I mean, you can't catch the wind and put it into a bottle and say, I'll pour it out later. You can't do that. And people chase life, chase their dreams and hopes, and there's nothing wrong with those things, as long as in the back of your mind you're constantly aware that someday you have to answer to God. I mean, in reality, God doesn't want you to waste your life. He doesn't want to just sit around and not have plans. He wants you to have plans. He wants you to have dreams. He wants you to have goals and pursue great noble things. It's what you're supposed to do. But keep in mind always that all those dreams and goals and all those pursuits, how do they measure up between reality and life and eternity? How do they measure up? I traveled a few years ago, I got thinking about this, traveled to Tucson, and like everybody else, I saw people in the restaurants, and I saw people in the airports, and I saw people in the shopping malls and on the streets, and for some reason I couldn't get out of my head that what I was watching was people chasing the wind, just chasing the wind. I saw people in their meaningless pursuits of pleasure and entertainment. I saw people who no longer had a living soul, plastic people. You see them all over the place. Plastic people. Plastic brains, plastic hearts, and plastic smiles. And quite often just plastic happiness. I saw people, and we can see people today who really have no purpose in their life. Empty people with no purpose. People with no worthwhile goals. I saw people scurrying about like ants on an anthill. They run this way and they run that way, and they're chasing their dreams, and they're chasing their careers, and chasing the new cars, and chasing the bigger homes, and fatter bank accounts, and nicer clothes. People who constantly need to be entertained. They need something, they need stimulus around them. They need to be entertained. They cannot find satisfaction in their inner being. People without substance, plastic people. People live their lives in a fantasy world on the computers, or fantasy world on the internet, or fantasy world on Facebook, or fantasy world in movies or in television. People live vicariously through movie stars or sports heroes. I put air quotes on heroes there. And television characters. People who have lost, and that's why suicide is so high, they suspect. Higher among young white men than anybody else. Because in our inner being of our nature, our racial nature, we want to accomplish, we want to conquer. That's our inner being. And yet when they take away all that from us and try to substitute a plastic world, we become dissatisfied with it. Now, I know that there may be somebody listening, people here know better, but there may be somebody listening on the internet or at some point watching this on YouTube or something, and say, well, that's Tom Robb is saying that because he lives back in the hills and he's never been to the big city before, and so, or maybe just because he's old, and so that's why he's kind of sound pessimistic. And I'm really not a pessimistic person. People know me, know that. I'm talking just reality here today. But people who don't know, I'm from a big city, Detroit. I think that's a fairly good sized city. When I lived there, it was the third largest city in the country. I've done extensive traveling in every state of the country except Hawaii. I don't really have any great desire to go to Hawaii. But, so I've been out of the hills numerous times. I've been to the big city. And somebody said, well, it's because he's old. He's feeling that way. But that's not the case, because I know young people who think just like I do. So it's not because you're old. I know young people think exactly the way I do. They look and they see plastic people. And I know people who live in a city, maybe stuck in a city, who understand that also. So that has nothing to do whether you live in a country or whether you live in a city or whether you are young or whether you're old. You understand that there is a plastic world that has been dumped on us. We're supposed to just accept it, be another cog in the wheel of manufacturing corporations. Just be a cog. Don't worry about family, don't worry about children, just be a cog for the corporate profits. And that doesn't find satisfaction for people. It doesn't make them happy. It doesn't bring joy to them. I think part of the reason why people have the attitude I have, because they understand this enormous racial component responsibility that we have, and it's somewhat upsetting, I guess, or somewhat bothersome or whatever to see their racial brothers and sisters who are going down that wide path that Christ talked about, the wide path that leads to destruction. Doesn't bring happiness, doesn't bring joy. Moral standards are very important, totally be intertwined with our Christian character. These are expressions of our racial foundation. Joy comes from this understanding of who we are, this understanding of our relationship to the Lord, not just somebody that God felt pity for, because that's normally what the churches teach. God feels pity for all these people that are not Christians, and so he wants them to get saved. Well, it's more than that, because God isn't having pity upon us. He understands his responsibility. God has a responsibility too, and he has a responsibility to do what? Be faithful to his covenant. He's got that responsibility. If he's not faithful to his covenant, then he becomes a sinner. So he understands his responsibility to touch the hearts of our people. And it's from this Christian and racial identity that we have that we should then make our decisions. Our dreams, our goals, whether it's the car you drive, the house you live in, or where you live, every major decision you have, or every decision maybe, but certainly every major decision. I'm not talking about what kind of banana to get out of the grocery store, but a major decision in your life should be taken into account of your responsibility to race a nation. Determines our marriage partner. It should determine our goals in life. It should determine the kind of movies we watch and what kind of music we listen to. It should determine the kind of friends we make and the places we go and the things we do and the books we read. Our Christian character should mold us. Our racial identity should mold us in making all these decisions. The things we put in our head are going to will determine our moral foundation. These are your friends. Friends are more, like I mentioned here recently, friends are more than Jim or John or Jack or Mary or Peter, whatever. Friends are all those things you bring into your life, whether it be books or whether it be movies or whether it be music. All these things are friends you're bringing into, and they're all going to they're all going to play in your mind and in your spirit. These are your friends. Your music is your friends. The movies you watch are your friends. These are all friends. Choose your friends wisely. So we have this moral foundation we want to build, and this moral foundation reflects the kind of culture we'll end up with. Will it be a culture of substance or a culture of plastic? Many people are today concerned about our declining culture, decline of our moral character, and our Christian and racial identity. They're concerned about those things. Even some of those people are not aware. They still have a seed of concern. They're aware something is wrong. And we have a responsibility to reach them with a message that they can identify with. Not to run them off or say things that offends them, but things that will instruct them and teach them. If our Christian racial identity remains strong, then our culture will remain strong also, and our culture will thrive. But if our Christian racial identity is destroyed, our culture will simply rot away. And that's what we see happening about us today. Perhaps some of the hardest decisions, and perhaps the most important decisions, are going to be made between usually the ages of 16 and 20. Well, all through life you're going to be making major decisions, I know, but between 16 and 20, that's when really major decisions will be made in your life. Decisions are going to have consequences. The decisions usually deal with who you're going to marry, what kind of career choice you're going to have, and what kind of lifestyle you're going to have and pursue. These are all decisions being made between usually 16 and 20 years old. Young men and women when looking for a marriage partner, must also determine not only what kind of husband or wife this one is going to be. I know when I was growing up, my mom and dad, we were taught, you don't just look for a wife, you look for a mother. Look for someone who could be a mother to your children. And we all were all boys, so they didn't tell us to look for wives or look for husbands, but if they had daughters, they would have said the same thing, you know. What kind of person is this? What kind of father is this person going to be? What kind of mother is this person going to be? Those are the things you must look for. These are decisions you'll be making between 16 and 20 years old. There are other decisions that are made in younger years, which are often made for them by their parents. Those decisions are what kind of values and they're going to guide their life. Those decisions are being taught and instructed to children by mom and dad. Children may resist sometimes and may not understand and resist, with vigor, but they need to rely and trust their mother and father in teaching them. Certainly when a person becomes older, then he or she becomes responsible for their own decisions, but the fact is that the values and goals that most people have were established in their lives by the teaching and guidance of their parents. For most people, their life course is directed by their parents. If this teaching and guidance is not based upon Christian and racial identity, then the breakdown begins and our culture begins to rot. And we end up with plastic people. So today we are immersed in a society that has thrown away its Christian and racial identity. As a result, most people live the way I see it. Others may see it differently, so that's okay. Just the way I see it, most people live empty lives. For most people, their lives center on eating, sleeping, working, having kids, and then dying. That's their life. No dream of altruism at all for their racial brothers and sisters. They live their lives without meaning or purpose. Their existence is like what is recorded in James 4, we read here a moment ago. For what is your life is even a vapor that appears for a little while, then poof, remember? Poof, it vanishes away. Every Christian, every person becomes a Christian, they have this responsibility. They have this identity. This identity isn't just my career. Everybody should understand that we in our movement certainly should understand that it isn't that there's somebody who's a preacher, there's somebody who is this, that, the other, but I'm a farmer, or I'm a clerk at a store, or I'm this or I'm that. Every single person has one single identity. That is to advance the kingdom of God, to advance our racial heritage. That is the goal of everything else you do. I don't care what kind of career it is. Your career is just something to help that happen. It's just to assist that. That's all it is. I want to repeat myself. People have this identity of some career they have. I'm a real estate agent. I'm a lawyer, I'm a barber, or I'm this, or I'm that. I work here, I work there. No, that's just what you're doing. Your identity, your purpose is to advance the movement, our cause, and white Christian revival. That is what you're here for. You just have these other jobs to make some money. And to make the money for what purpose? To take care of yourself, and then what God described, the tithe, to support the cause. If you're not supporting the cause with your tithe, then what's the point of your existence? What's the point of your purpose? In the play Shakespeare wrote called Macbeth, he ends with these words. I believe I have it on the screen. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player, that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. According to Shakespeare, most people's lives signified nothing. James says our life is a vapor that vanishes away. Solomon says there's nothing to gain from anything we do. And Shakespeare says our life is full of sound and fury, but in the end of our life, for all his ranting and all his raving, with all his worldly pursuits, it really has no significance. And see, that's why Christ came. Christ came to give us significance in our lives. He came to give us purpose. More than just going through life and being pushed and battered around until you die. He came and he touched the lives of the disciples and touched the lives of people for centuries to give them purpose, to give them significance. And that's what we have, significance. We can have a significant influence in the lives of our nation and the lives of people, because we are all people of influence. There are people who look up to you. You may not realize it, but every single person here has somebody that looks up to you and respects you, and you have influence over them. And what is that influence for? The influence is for what purpose? To advance white Christian revival. That's the purpose. Do we really want to live lives that signify nothing? Do we? I know it may sound depressing to think we go through life and in a few short years our memory is forgotten. And all that we work for will belong, Solomon said, will belong to somebody else. Everything you own will belong to somebody else someday. If it's nothing more than the dumpster and the garbage heap, it's going to belong to somebody else. Everything you have. So it may sound depressing if we have a life without significance, to think that at the end of our lives we'll just simply be buried, and there'll be a headstone put on our gravesite, and people will be stepping over it to take pictures of the pretty maple trees. Yet we are told in the Bible that our life does just puff away, vanishes away. And Shakespeare said, for most people, it signifies nothing. But Christ came to make a difference. He came so our life does signify something. Signify the lives of our families and our children and people we influence every single day. It makes no difference if you're rich and powerful or if you're poor beggar on the street. Solomon said everyone will end up in the grave. Everyone. Wealth and power, even knowledge and wisdom ultimately are all worthless, Solomon said. It's all worthless. So the size of your bank account, the kind of car you drive, what neighborhood you live in, the quality of your clothes, the size of your credit rating, the number of designer shoes and purses in your closet, what your average golf score or bowling score is, how many college degrees you have, your career status, your dress size, or how much you can bench press. All means nothing. They all signify nothing. But the lives you touch, the children you touch, the restored faith that you touch in other people, that signifies something. That signifies hope in the lives of people and signifies this move towards a white Christian revival. But having those things, the dress size and the designer clothes and shoes and credit rating, if that's all a person has, if that's all your goal is, if that's your dream, if that's all we care about in life, then we're in good company because we are surrounded by plastic people whose lives signify nothing. Proverbs 12:15 says, the way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but he that listens to counsel is wise. These people ruin lives. They thought they were making good decisions. Nobody says, I'm going to make a bad decision. They think it's a good decision. It just has a bad consequence. Caleb, can you read this one? Don't waste your time talking to fools. They'll just ignore you. Christ said, don't cast your pearls before swine. Here's one. Can you read this one, Dayton? A fool doesn't take time to understand. How many times do you talk to somebody? They just don't want to take time to understand. Proverbs 24:7 says, wisdom is too high for a fool. Proverbs 26:11 says, as a dog returneth to his vomit, so a fool returneth to his folly. Proverbs 10:14, wise men lay up knowledge, but the mouth of the foolish is near destruction. Proverbs 17:25, a foolish son is a grief to his father, and bitterness to her that bear him. So the things that Solomon said about people being foolish can also be said about a nation. A nation that has become foolish. Because we have peeled away our Christian and racial identity, we have become a foolish nation that has lost its soul. Our people become empty, they become plastic people, and they become fools. The nation and its empty people, with their worthless pursuit of nice homes and comfortable cars and vacations and jewelry that sparkles the eyes of everybody. I mean, who here wouldn't like a beautiful mansion and a beautiful car and beautiful furniture and entertainment and cruise the seven seas? We all would like that. There's nothing wrong with those things. But keep your priorities. Keep your priorities. All these things will buy happiness for somebody for a short time. They'll provide pleasure for a short time. They'll provide comfort for a short time. But they can never give joy to the soul. There's a big difference between joy in your soul than happiness. People find happiness for a short time, but is there inner joy? That's why people, sometimes wealthy people, who have, you think, have everything in the world, will end it all with an overdose of some narcotic or maybe just shoot their brains out. Because they had all the pleasures that we think would make us happy, and yet they had no joy. So that was Solomon's message, and that's what Christ talked about, and we hear about. Solomon said, let the conclusion of the whole matter, fear God and keep his commandments. For this is the whole duty of man, for God shall bring every work into judgment. So in closing, Christ reminded us that the only things important to life was to love our God and to love our people. I know I bring it up a lot. I'm aware of that. What other purpose do you have? What other purpose do you have? What other purpose in your life seems even remotely important compared to that? I can't think of any. I can't think of any importance in anything we do that can compare with the awesome responsibility and joy that comes from loving our God and from loving our people. So let's keep our focus on our lives. Let's keep our focus on joy. Let's keep a focus on having a life of significance, because everything else will simply pass away. My dad used to have in the Bible, if I can remember right the fly day for his Bible, one life will soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last. Our Father, we thank you for this wonderful opportunity we can come and learn and study and understand our awesome responsibility. You showed us the way to joy. The world doesn't see it. The world is blind. The world is foolish. The world can't comprehend. They're chasing a plastic life. Help us, Father, to enjoy the lives, enjoy the pleasures, enjoy the many blessings you've given us. We want to enjoy those things. You expect us to enjoy those things. You expect us to pursue happiness and niceties of life. It's what we should do. But help us also understand that ultimately we'll stand before you and we'll give an account for our lives. And may we go to the grave with the supreme understanding the significance of loving our God and loving our people. In your name we ask it, amen.
Excellent message, Pastor Rob. We'd like to give more information regarding our church service as well as our conference that we have throughout the year. You can write to us at Christian Revival Center, P.O. Box 602, Harrison, Arkansas 72601. That's Christian Revival Center, P.O. Box 602, Harrison, Arkansas 72601. Or you can email us at revival@southshore.com, revival@southshore.com. And with that, if I can have Jonathan come up, and if everyone can please stand, and we're going to have one more song.